So talking about our mental and emotional health and well-being, and I guess to save a bit of time for myself, I would not go into all the mood swings and emotions and why and what, all the hormones and stuff. So I get a bit more time to talk about maybe positive things we can do. So for me, really, when we talking about coming out of that mental, that emotional swings and moods and all that ups and downs, I'm recording it, so I will also share it with you all, as long as I get a link to send it. So when we're talking about this mood swings, all this thing we're going through, and I guess as a woman and as a man, there is a little bit of situations, or there is a sort of like either you can talk about the physical changes, there is emotional changes, there is a little bit of dynamic change in relationship itself. So there is a little bit of that disruption on what normally used to be before you are conceived. So there is the dynamic of relation changes, and I guess in some ways that's like in earlier couple of days ago we were talking about, if the man is very well prepared mentally or emotionally and knows what he's going into, then that makes life easy. But if the man is not really sort of prepared for all that changes and transformation, then he sort of assumes everything is still the same. He still expects the same thing. He still expects that time, that energy, that intimacy from the partner, which obviously, as a woman, they're not in that mood anymore. The energy, it's not just the mood, also physically, it's just not maybe appropriate. Some people, they can still carry on, but other people just don't have the energy anymore. And that sort of causes a little bit of disruption in relations, and that, I guess, that feeds into our emotions. Because I don't know, I've not seen many people who say, I don't have this mood, emotional swings and this up and down of my body, mind and my emotions, because that's what Patanjali says in Yoga Sutras. We all are living into this whirlpool. So in some sort of way you can sort of think, your mind has the capacity to remain quiet, but then it also has the ability, it likes to go up and down, and it goes ups and downs. So if you can make a very zigzag graph, especially if you've seen the cardiograms, the way your heart does all that. So naturally our mind has that conditioning, that's why it does. It remains quiet, and when in morning when you try to sit quiet, or when you're trying to relax, in every few breaths or every few minutes the mind wanders around. So the fluctuation, this is the nature of mind. Obviously on top of that, because we're going through the transformation, that's the new space created, and then all the emotional and all the, I guess, the hormonal changes, the physical changes, causing or putting more, I guess, the wood into the fire. So to me, when we start to look into what we can do, that journey can really begin with the first thing, as earlier we were talking about the cake, is to starting to change the words we use in our life. And that has actually the two benefits. The one benefit, it will transform our relationship with ourselves, relationship with the people we live with, and it will also calm you down or have a much healthier input of your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, or that positive energy into the baby that is growing there. So to me, the word can be as simple as changing from I don't care to I'm just impartial, or I like everything. So if your partner is trying to be helpful, then it's like when we go through that, we can just literally say I don't care. And sometimes that can actually make people feel quite helpless. especially if your partner or the people around, they're trying to really be helpful. If your partner is with you, they just don't know what to do. They just can offer you a cup of tea, which you can refuse. So in a situation, to me the first practice begins with starting to be a little bit more selective or fussy or choosy on the words, the phrases, the way we use them. And now I'm really talking about your own health, your own well-being. So that no care attitude can change into I do care, but I don't mind. There is two different things when we say I don't care. If someone says I would like to have a cup of tea, whatever, I don't care. Or you say, yes, I would love to have one, but what tea would you like? You say, I don't mind, whichever you got. There is no huge difference. But actually, if you look from the emotional perspective, I don't care what I get, or I don't mind what I get. Or if you can change it to even something a little bit more better, you say, well, whatever you got, I would love that. Or just be precise, be selective, be clear, like, can I have a particular tea? If you got one. So to me, when we talking about this transformation from within, really starting to think of choosing the words we use. Now in yoga, on the courses, to me, really my journey really begins with changing some of the phrases, like we can say, let's sit down. Now Amaji in ashram and some other gurus I've been through, they would never use such word. They would always get quite upset. Why would you sit down? They would always say, at least say, let's sit up. So the minute you change the word from sit down to sit up, you're actually changing your whole attitude of being upright. The one word I myself do still struggle, like, whenever we go to Savasana, it naturally comes out, let's lie down. Someone like Amaji in ashram for 6 months, I never had once at the end of every Hatha Yoga session to say, okay everyone, it's time to lie down. She always said, it's time to let go, time to go into Nispanda, find the space to lie and go, or make your space for Savasana or relaxation or Jnana Yoga practice. So these little things, when you start changing in your life, the way, the attitude, the thought we put into even our cup of tea, or our lunch, our meal, our work, or where we're spending time with our friends or families. Because that's where the emotional disturbance, it begins where we start to feel that disconnection or disapproval. Well, all that disconnection is just the way we read things, the way we say things. If you can slightly change it, you start to feel great about it. If it's like, to me, another phrase you can use, like someone's standing in front and say, like, I'm just going to take my clothes off. And then if you say, I'm going to change my clothes, or I'm going to dress up. If someone is using these three phrases, even though in all three, we know that the same sort of thing is going to happen, the process is same, but the energy that the phrase being used creates is completely different. So the first practice is starting to think and be sort of mindful of the words, the emotions, the energy you're creating. And then the second thing, to me, once you kind of understand that idea, I guess acceptance is a very big step forward too. And I do, when I used to go to the midwife-led sessions here, I kind of said several times, every partner should come and listen about, what women have to go through, the emotional changes. But again, it's not just the male side, but I think both partners, so the both of the male and female, if they're together, or if just we're talking about the woman, is actually accepting that all that we go through, the mood swing, all the emotions, are actually real. It doesn't mean that there is something actually wrong with you. You don't have to feel that you are a victim. You don't have to feel that you are doing something that is not right or that is not appropriate, because all that hormonal changes, all that the chemical changes your body going through, it's just a natural expression. Its only difference is different people will deal with it differently. Some of us might be able to handle them a bit more easy, and especially to me, if the woman being pregnant and they have led their life or they have lived their life very outgoing, being busy, doing work and leading people and being bossy, and then suddenly you come to a completely different end where you lose that control. So to me, that acceptance that all these mood swings, all the emotions I go through, there is a reason to it. And I do find myself, the acceptance is one of the most amazing therapy, self-therapy you can do. It's like stopping to fight, stopping to like control and hide away, like, no, I should not be doing it. Because some days, as a pregnant woman, you just don't want to see somebody, you don't want to talk, you don't want to come out for food, you just want to eat something in a quiet corner. And in a sort of Vedic time, in a Vedic culture, that's what they used to. They used to have a completely sort of area that the space was given to them to have that selfish space, either to meditate, to read books, or to rest, to relax. All the singing, chanting, all that was like sort of given through the family, through the social setup, to have that space. And I guess that having the space is actually, does begin with acceptance, actually approving it. That's okay. Then from there we start to look a little bit more from some of the Vedic and psychological ideas. Really, to me, I do love, again, Patanjali talks about all these mood swings, and he said this is our nature, that we struggle with thoughts, we struggle with feelings, emotions, desires, all that impulses that given to us through the situations. And the great thing he says, the first thing he says, what you do to deal with them. And you all will be surprised. You know what does he say? He said, Abhyasa, which literally translates as practice. He does not say what to do. He does not say go and have a cup of tea, or go out and have a glass of wine, or go and have a massage, or listen music. He said, practice. So to me, I literally translate that. He says, do something about it. Don't hide. Don't put yourself in like, oh, I'm just suffering. If you're going through that emotion, if you're going through certain changes, he said, do something about it. Now, that do something about can be as simple as have a cup of tea, go out for a walk, or listen some nice music, do some relaxation. I would have said do some hot yoga, but here obviously I would keep those words out. Because when we're going through that hormonal, any emotions caused by hormones, I personally would say, sort of hot yoga practice in most cases might not be appropriate. If we do something like what we did in the morning, the sound, that sort of work will bring calmness. If you start to do more active work, then that might actually bring up the nausea or the sickness emotions up. So I would keep things much more calmer into those situations. But Patanjali, he literally says abhyasa, practice, or he says do something about it. As Amaji says, and one of the, I think, modern philosopher, I love this phrase. He says, when you're going through the dark tunnel, don't sit in the middle of it. And to me, it's a really nice sort of translation of this concept Patanjali is talking. Because if he said, if you sit down in the middle of it, you're going to end up living in the dark rest of your time. He said, keep going through it until you come out of that tunnel into light. And that's what Patanjali says, do something about it. Action. Action. And the action, I like, the word you're saying, action and intention and attention. Even if you need attention, I would say do something about it. Don't wait for it. Because I do believe, there is a plenty of support for all of us. But obviously, to get that support, you must ask.
People are scared to ask sometimes, aren't they? That's the big thing.
Oh, you have to ask, yeah. I know. And especially to me, during pregnancy, it's something we all should really have that bravery. We should ask. Because you definitely deserve any form of support, really. To me, if someone says, would you like me to cook your meal? If I teach pregnancy classes, I would tell people here and there, like if someone says, would you like me to cook your meal? Just please make sure you do say, yes, please. And also give your list of things that you would love to eat.
Make the most of it.
Make the most of it. So that brings us to the third point. Accept the support, receive it.
There's quite a strong tendency, I think, in our culture to see these things as a kind of necessary suffering, that it's kind of like we don't really, that we have to kind of put up with it. That it's sort of part and parcel of being a woman.
Especially as women being independent, you feel quite like you've got to get it done yourself. There's like that aspect to it.
And I think another thing I do find a little bit in sort of Western culture or mindset, that lots of people do believe that if they're going through the hardship, it's their karma and they must deal with it on their own. But in a realistic sense, no, it's not. It's a collective karma. As if you expand that as a woman, if you're being pregnant and if you're struggling on your own, well, in a long term, then it is going to cause trouble to your partner if they are around, then the families, people who are involved in it. So in a bigger picture, at some point, everyone is going to have some bit of that bitterness, wouldn't they? So then isn't it better to be able to actually receive help, especially when people are offering it? I personally, I'm not sure if I would actually shout out to people, please can someone come and cook my meal? But if people offering it, which in most cases it does happen. There are some people always around, they will offer you help.
I think most people as well, when there are pregnant women, they're quite, people tend to want to sort of keep you happy about that. So I think try and be helpful, even if they're not that helpful. Pay the inverse sometimes.
That's what I mean. Sometimes
Well, everybody is, but I guess again, we just have to not take into that perspective, like people trying to find out if someone is offering help. It's just, we don't have to, I always think, like, we don't have to spend all our life thinking what people thinking, do we? If they're thinking good, it's good for them, and if they're thinking bad, even if it's about you, it's bad for them. It's nothing to do with us, is it?
If they think bad, this is not bad energy coming to you and your baby?
Actually, if I be honest, if you're not receiving it, if you're not accepting it, it does not. So think of, if someone gives you a compliment or someone says something a bit torturing, even though it's not as easy as I'm talking, but until you really accept it, it will not affect you. But as I said, in a day-to-day life, it's easy said than actually done. And the practice I do say at that level, obviously in an outer appearance, you don't really want people to to hear things, but in your own heart you can always say, it's not mine, you can keep it. Just don't accept it. It will be much more easier, and I do believe in this practice actually. If we can keep working on it over and over again and again, gradually it does become easier and easier. And this is something I did use quite a lot when I started working in one of the biggest schools back in India. Because we were like 148 teachers, and there was always a little bit of politics, and all that was always there. And there was someone else wanted to get their own family member in the school as a teacher, and somehow I got it. So for quite a while there was a big sort of political group that was trying to cause any disruption to make me feel like, oh, I can't really do this anymore, or if I don't put my full potential into it, then at the end of the year the school will give the report, oh, he's not good enough, he must go. So I used that trick every time someone was saying something or doing something. I always in my heart, very quietly, like, it's not mine, you keep what you have, I'm not taking it. And then gradually people gave up. But once you bought it, once you accepted it, that kind of empowers them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's what they want. And if you've taken it, you're feeding back to them. So if you can neglect that, if you can not respond to it, then it's fine. And practice is you have to work on both ways. I always find it's much easier if you start working on the positive thing. If someone says really nice to you, you don't have to feel flattered. So if you can work on the positive side first and then work on the negative side, your mind will feel so much more empowered, because the negativity does have much more stronger gravity, the force or the dependence of our mind, because it's like somehow the negativity has much more stronger whirlpools of our mind or the thoughts that drowns us into it, while the positive thoughts, they don't really have that intensity. They have the joyfulness, but I think even psychologically they have done some research on the brain, and they said your brain it can have 11 thoughts in a row maximum. That's the maximum positive thoughts you can have.
How many?
11.
Wow.
That's the maximum. So you got to be highly positive to have that number of thoughts in a row.
It's a bit of a human condition, isn't
Yes.
it? To focus on the negatives and forget about the positive aspects.
Yeah. But I guess the therapy of that, the cure, the management of that has to again beginning with acceptance itself. Quite amazing. Swamiji talks about in his step-by-step course, which another idea I like about this whole emotional and mental well-being. He said if you're struggling with any of that in you, either it's your mental or emotional, either it's acute or just the incidental, whichever level it is, if you want to come out of it, if you want to heal it, cure it, the first thing you have to begin with acceptance. It's actually accepting that I got a problem, because that's what we do, isn't it? We keep denying the denial, and the denial actually empowers the negativity. I've seen many people, in denial, they manipulate their own negativity to make it feel like, actually, I'm positive. And we all know that, if a story that being repeated in your mind 10 to 20 times in 5-10 minutes, that gradually becomes a reality or truth for your brain. Because your brain does not have its own intelligence. Your brain is just like the hardware in your computer. It just holds all the memories, all the experiences. Then your mind, your consciousness have the ability of buddhi or intellect that refines it. If you repeated something so many times, that actually becomes your truth.
So that's why we try nesting in dark
coming out into yeah, it's a huge fear, and like Swamiji used to talk, or he talks, and I'll come back to what I was talking. He said the addiction to pain or problems is actually the worst addiction that human mind carries. So addiction of drugs, addiction of smoking, drinking, or sex, or anything else, he said, you can cure them like that if you want to. And I'm sure you would have known few people in your life, they have drunk all their life, and suddenly you see them in the morning and like, I think I've decided I'm not drinking. I'm known quite a few people actually have done the dramatic 180 turn. I'm not drinking, or I'm not taking drugs, or something anymore. Actually snipping out of that addiction to pain, because that gradually becomes our life, and we don't know if anything actually exists out of that box. And this is why you will see, some people are, again, I've known quite a few actually, they keep reoccurring or refinding themselves into same sort of abusive relation. You think, oh, you already had that 2 months ago, and you split up, and now you go on to the next man or woman, and that's even 10 times better or worse. Because once we get used to that, as into that tunnel, that becomes our reality. So coming out of that is not easy. So Swamiji says, the addiction to pain is one of the worst addiction as a human being can have. But it's not impossible. At any point, if you want to snip out of it, each one of us, physically, mentally, consciously, do have the ability to snip out of it. And that's another great thing Patanjali does say in Yoga Sutra. He said, each mind have the ability to be realized or enlightened. So if you ever question yourself thinking, oh, I wasn't born in India, I wasn't born in Hinduism or Buddhism, or I wasn't born into this typical Christian family where the religion was taught, spirituality was taught, I have no right to be enlightened. You know what Patanjali says? He said, every mind that exists has equal potential. So each one of us have the ability to come out of that dark tunnel, but we just have to stand up and walk. So coming back to what Swamiji talks about, so the first therapy, the remedy of our mental and emotional stuff begins with acceptance. And you will find most of the half of things tend to just go away the minute you accepted it. So the minute your mind denies on things, there's a really nice story actually. I will share that before I move on, and then see if Anita got a question at the end. Come on, you have to come up with it. I'm just having a laugh. So there's this man, he was someone like me. He was just going on his, let's make it a modern story, okay? So he was going on his first date, and he was feeling a bit shy, and he thought, well, what do I do? And as he was walking down to the pub he was meeting with, he met with his best friend, who just came back after a long travel around the world, and he said, this is what I'm doing, would you please come with me? And the friend said, of course I would come with you, but you see, look, I just come out of journey, and I just traveled around my backpack, everything is dirty, and I look so messy, don't you think I'm not really the right person to come with you? And he said, don't you worry, I got a new suit in my house, come on, I will give you a new dress. So he gave him a new trouser and a new shirt and a jacket and everything. It just made him look like absolutely brilliant. And then they started to walk. Now, when you started to walk, suddenly you realize, actually, my friend looks better than me because I've given him new clothes and everything. And once the question goes in your mind, he started to question like, oh my God, I'm going to go and see this girl first time. Hope she's not going to like him more than me, and it's all going to fall apart. Well, they both got there and sat down, and he introduced his friend, and as they were talking about, obviously, sometimes talking to the friend is a little bit easier than the man or woman you're trying to meet. So they tend to become a bit comfort, don't they? And so every time she was talking, she was looking at him and looking at, he was feeling like if she was just constantly looking at how great clothes he had and how great he's looking because of them. And somewhere in between, he just could not stop. He just comes out of my, just to let you know, he's my best friend and we grew up together and he's great, he's done this and that, but just to let you know, the clothes are mine. Oh, quite embarrassing. The girl was obviously quite annoyed with it. She was just like, oh, if that's how you behave with friends, I don't think there's a hope. So she left. The friend was quite upset too. That was like very annoying. Why would you say that? And it's like, I'm really sorry. I would never do that. But he said, I could not help it. I don't know how it come out. Anyway, he kind of made him calm down and said, look, while we're here, there's my auntie. She just lives down the road. And, we love her and you know her very well. And he just came, well, why don't we, let's go and see her. And they will cheer us up. Oh, they ended up knocking on their auntie's door, and there were another few friends already there, and they all started to chat and laugh. And obviously, when that happens, everyone is like, wow, you just came and did you buy these new clothes just today or just to come here and people talking about them? Now this friend, obviously, his mind was just like, because he was constantly thinking how not to say it. He's like, I don't want to embarrass myself to say again that the clothes are mine. So he's just like, no, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. Well, he just comes back. When you get the microphone to your hand, he started to talk again, and he's sort of sharing some stories between their childhood and all their memories. And he said, oh yeah, I love him. He's my best friend, and the clothes are his. They have nothing to do with me. And then I was like, what? Why do you have to say that? He said, the clothes are not mine. They're his own clothes. And that's what happens. Is the minute you create that no, that the pressure on your mind, then your mind starts to conflict and it starts to create the stories. And he goes to the third house. And that's how far we actually go round and round things. So, somehow we managed to calm him down again, and let's see now my mom and dad, and come on, nothing can go wrong in my own house now. And the dog talked again and again, and then again, as he just came back after this long travel, and everyone got to ask, like, wow, how come you got new clothes? And there's this friend sitting there, really tight, like, if you are very well constipated, like, how do I deal with it? In my mind thinking like, no, I'm just not going to say it. I already ruined it once saying clothes are mine. Second time I ruined it by saying clothes are not mine. And as he goes on, and again he gets his chance to talk, and he was talking about his friendship, and he was talking about the things they do, and then the new ideas they both were discussing. And he said, I love him, he's my best friend, and the clothes are his. And no, he said, I'm not going to say anything about clothes. So the third time he said, I'm going to say nothing about his clothes. And then obviously he ruined it again. So to change something, to transform something, we have to accept. If you deny the conflict, actually your mind loves that. If you're thinking, okay, I would love to come and do yoga class, or if it's said to you in a different language, you must come to yoga class, and if you don't, then there is a trouble in it. Even though, honestly, this is serious stuff now, even though you might think, I actually signed up for the course, I paid for it, and then someone just said the same phrase, you could have said in a nice word, then you start to think, how can I get away with it? That rebellious mind, or even you said it to yourself, how can I miss it? Or I'm not doing this, I'm not putting my mind into it. So Swamiji said that the cure, that transformation from within begins with acceptance. And he said acceptance is also actually, if you don't take it literally negative, then it's sort of giving up. Isn't it? It's like giving up. That's actually me. This is how I think, this is how I feel, this is how I go through my emotions. And he said that once you have accepted and giving into it, that's where the spring, the dissolution, the sun rises, where you can find how I can let it go now. While you're not accepting, not giving up on things, you are actually clinging on to the emotions. And this is what the Vedic practices literally says: acceptance, giving up or giving in, and then either you have to look for what we call the solution, resolution, or letting go. So there's always three or four options. The one option is let's deal with it, but there are things that you can't really do much about it. Then you have to just simply grow out of it. You have to let it go. Not every problem actually have a solution, and if you think that it does, you're just making your own life hard for nothing. Because we all go through, that's how our mind, our emotions, when we talk about the emotional and mental health and well-being, we all have those impulses, and what can you do with them? Either you can keep suffering with them and keep punishing yourself, suffering with guilt, anger, resentment, frustration, judgment, or you can accept them and find the way. So I guess the first thing we should always really look about, what can I do about it? Maybe into that burst you said something that you should not have said to your partner or your relation or your friends. To me, it's not that letting go is as simple as I just let it go. Because if in some sort of hurt, some sort of conflict, there are other people involved, then really that letting go has to come from a very mutual place. I can't just forgive myself if I said to you all, okay, I'll see you all 6:30 in the morning or 7 in the morning, I will do Hatha Yoga class, do some gentle work, and I did not turn up. Or can I just sit back there and oh, it's okay, I'm just going to be non-judgmental and I forgive myself and I just overslept. So to me that forgiveness, yes, it has to be done. Because one of us can oversleep. It's not end of the world, is it? If you could not turn up, you just slept through. It's no end of the world. You forgot to bring your paperwork, you forgot to do something you promised. Or you missed it, or maybe you did not have time, you did not have resources. You got to accept it's no end of the world. You haven't really done a crime that you should be killing and beating yourself mentally and emotionally. But then that healing process has, yes, there is something I can do about it. Which can be as simple as coming out when I see you all, say, look, I'm really sorry, I just don't know what happened. I forgot to turn my alarm on and I just woke up when it was time to finish the class. And I thought there's no point coming out. Or maybe I could have come later. So the healing has to begin from the mutual, from the right place. So the acceptance, then as you're trying to find the way to deal with it, I guess it's not just completely, it's okay, I forgive myself, or I'm a non-judgmental person. That's another thing I do find quite interesting, where lots of people use that. Yes, if someone else is doing something that you don't like, then it's a great practice. We can't use that as our excuse, is it? I can come out and shout and say, oh, I'm just going to be non-judgmental, not judging myself. It's okay, I busted into an emotion. So acceptance, then you start to find the way to heal it, or then on top of that, if you can't really heal, if it does not work, then you must let it go. As in yoga, we have this really beautiful phrase that we keep reminding each other: do your best and leave the rest. Because once you have done your best, either it's physical, mental, or emotional, then you must leave it in the hands of the divine. Sometimes time maybe is a better healer. Once you come out and said, look, I'm sorry, this is what happened, and then maybe give things a space. It's interesting, even nowadays the doctors are even telling some of these people with the mental problems, go for holidays. What Patanjali says, he said, when you're struggling with the emotions, create some space from the stimulus, from the situation. Don't keep yourself into that place where you're constantly reacting to them. It's quite amazing, like in modern time, we all know that. Just give yourself a space. Because if you're constantly into the situation, into the stimulus, which is causing disruption to your feelings, emotions, it's going to make it worse, and it's not going to give you the time to find some sort of clarity. So to find clarity, Patanjali says, whenever you're struggling with that, struggling with the reactions, with the emotions, try to create the gap or the space. I guess the one thing we can always do is create the gap between the stimulus and your reaction. Now, scientifically, if you think about, the first response whenever something happens around us, we have the first reflex, the fight-flight response from our spinal or our reptilian memory. And that is based on survival instinct, how to survive. And then the second response comes from the cortex part, the human part of our brain, which is actually quite new, quite recent. It's not very old compared to the life itself. But there is a huge gap between two of them. So your spinal response comes sort of between 1/10 to 1/4 or 5th fraction of a second. So if your hand goes to the fire, that's how quick that the fight-flight response will throw your hand away. And then it takes a little bit more time for your brain to analyze and think that if I don't do something about it, this fire is going to burn the house down. Or I can close the door a bit, or I can put it inside the fire and it heats up the house. So in that way, Patanjali says, try to create a little space between the stimulus and your reaction. And then it becomes your action. And I'm sure many times we do things into the impulsive emotion, and after 2 seconds we feel like, oh, but then it's too late. Now the second thing, as sometimes the stimulus, the situation itself can be so negative, then you can also see that create the space itself. So you're not leaving yourself, allowing yourself to be in that situation, in that environment. Because the minute you sit out, that gives you a whole new clarity, a new vision, or a new outlook on looking at things. So to me, I'll just stop here for now. Some of these Vedic ideas, we can keep talking on them as long as we like. Acceptance, changing some of the phrases, the way we talk and the way we think about ourselves and our surroundings. Through the acceptance, then we start to look for solutions or resolutions, or sometimes just giving up to let go. Oh, giving up is also a good solution actually. We talk about fight and flight. You don't always have to fight, do you? Sometimes flight might be a better option. Instead of putting more wood into the fire to let it grow big, you just run. And then doing everything we can to calm everything else that is involved in it. Either calming other people, just simply, it can be as simple as just coming out and saying sorry to people, or giving someone a flower, or giving someone a plant, or something to acknowledge that was wrong. And I guess it can't be more useful and practical and simple than that.